Hello everyone, welcome to this self-knowledge course. Today we have the topic number 8. And today we are going to be talking about the evolution, involution, and revolution. Let me see something here. Okay. And well, welcome to all of you. Today's topic is actually very interesting, and because today we are going to learn about the evolution and the involution processes that we as divine sparks go through in this physical manifestation. We'll see how we've been evolving and passing also through the involution process through the different kingdoms of nature and for what purpose. And we are going to learn about the law of revolution that will allow us to get out of this mechanical wheel in which we find ourselves, known as the wheel of Samsara, but rescuing all the wisdom that we have been acquiring. And the objective of this topic is for us to be able to see clearly why we come to this planet and how we can achieve that objective. And why is this topic so important? Well, I think it is because if we don't reach that point in our lives where we clearly come to understand what are we doing here, what is the purpose of existence, we will simply continue turning on this wheel, repeating the same actions, committing the same mistakes, living the same life once and again without having even the chance of awakening. So if we get to understand this topic, it will actually give us a lot of strength and a lot of courage to do our inner work. So let's start by trying to understand what are these laws of evolution and involution. We need to know that this universe, let's say, and this planet, because it is in the universe, is managed by, let's say, several mechanical laws that are there, like to put an order to the creation. And these laws, the evolution and the involution, are part of these laws. Both laws are completely mechanical, and they always go to depend one on the other. And these two laws, if you get to observe the universe, all things, you are going to see that these two laws are actually processed in everything. We see that everything begins, grows, then decreases, and ends. I mean, plants, animals, people, as you can see here, everything is born, everything evolves until it reaches like a climax, then begin to get sick, to weaken until one day it dies. But the same happens with everything. You can see, like, for example, a company is formed and it will grow. It will reach the highest peak of profitability, and over time it will start to decline until it falls completely. And we can see that further in how the great and powerful civilizations that have existed have also reached a high point in their evolution, and in the same time when the law of involution like takes them, they have fallen and you can find only the ruins. So we can see that actually nothing escapes these two laws, and our own essence also goes through this process as it is like subject to the mechanics of this universe until we manage to free ourselves, to revolutionize ourselves and free ourselves from the mechanics of this universe. We are going to be processed by these laws. So what is interesting is that we get to understand how do we evolve through the four kingdoms of nature. There you can see. And actually, the most common is that people believe that they are only their physical body. But certainly, we are much more than that. This physical body is just a vehicle that our essence, which is our spirit, our consciousness, is now using to move in this third dimension. That spirit, that consciousness that we really are, is that spark that once came out from the source here, from the sacred absolute sun, and all the sparks come from the sacred absolute sun in search of their mastery or looking to achieve the self-realization. That let us know that we all came with a purpose, and that purpose is to obtain wisdom through all the experiences that we are going to live while we create the ego through the different kingdoms of nature. And that is, we came to this physical manifestation to do like a course, a mastery, to return to the source with wisdom once we have achieved our self-realization. And when sparks come out of the sacred absolute sun, they do it through one of the seven rays of creation. And according to the ray through which the spark has emanated, it will be its vocation and the type of particular wisdom that that spark will develop. And it is important, actually, that we get to astrally investigate which is the ray through which our spark emanated, because this information actually will help us to understand or to know better what is our real vocation. So in a conscious astral projection, we can actually ask our inner being to show us which of the seven rays of creation our spark emanated. The most common is that when we ask for that information in the astral plane, they show us a mirror. And in that mirror, we must look at the lines on our forehead. And but although they could tell us, showing us a specific number, but the most common thing is that they show us a mirror. And if we see ourselves in the astral plane, in that mirror, one line on the forehead, then we belong to the ray of the moon, that is the first ray. But if we see two, and this you can see like more or less the vocations or that wisdom with which each ray is related. Like for example, the moon is related to creation, to maternity, to agriculture, etc. And if you see two lines on your forehead in the astral plane, then your spark emanated from the ray of, or through the ray of Mercury. And this is the specific wisdom for those sparks. If you see three lines, then you came from the ray of Venus. If you see four lines, then you came from this through the ray of Sun. If you see five lines, then you came through the ray of Mars, which is the ray of the strength of war. If six lines, then this means that your spark emanated from the ray of Jupiter. And if seven lines, then you belong to the ray of Saturn. And well, it is important to know this. This will let us understand our own vocation. But it is also important to know that depending on the ray from which we have emanated, the species or types of minerals, plants, and animals through which our spark we will pass will depend. So once our spark emanated from the absolute sun through one of these rays, it is immediately connected to the wheel of Samsara. Here you see like a representation of the wheel of Samsara. This wheel ascend on evolution directed by Anubis and descend on evolution directed by Typhon. And this spark, this little spark, has a 3% of free and conscious essence and also a 97% of innocent and catchable essence, and is going to enter to the different kingdoms of nature to create ego. so that this 97% of innocence will be trapped by each of the defects that we will create, and from there it will acquire all the wisdom of duality. That is, all the wisdom of good and evil, because we are going to create both good and bad defects in order to be able to extract the wisdom from good and evil. And there in this wheel, 300 esoteric years are given to the spark to achieve self-realization. And these 300 esoteric years are represented in the formation of 3,000 souls. This means that we have the right to make 3,000 turns on this wheel, and we are going to create that soul going through the different kingdoms of nature. And the spark is going to pass through the mineral kingdom, creating defects, through the plant kingdoms, creating more defects, through the animal kingdom, creating even more defects, and upon reaching the human kingdom in that cycle, remember, are 3,000 cycles, and when reaching the human kingdom in one cycle, any of them, we'll have to write to 108 existences, or let's say we have to write to 108 human physical bodies, so that in one of those existences as humans, we develop that soul and achieve self-realization. And if we don't, we will lose that soul that we have created through that cycle, and we will lose it when going through the process of involution. And when we finish the process of involution, we are going to enter a new turn in the wheel. So if you make the math, you say that one soul for each cycle, and you see 108 human existences for each of the souls. If you make the math, 3,000 times 108 human existences for each of the souls, this is equivalent to 324,000 human physical bodies. That means that we have been given 324,000 opportunities as humans to awaken our consciousness and achieve self-realization. But it is important to know that not all sparks reach self-realization. Many of them remain spinning in that process of evolution and involution until their chances run out, without ever reaching that point of revolution that leads them to awaken their consciousness and to achieve their self-realization, so they fail. All sparks have free will and are never forced or obligated to reach triumph. But rather, there are three alternatives in the wheel. The first one is to triumph, that is to achieve self-realization. The second alternative will be the failure, that is to exhaust all those existences and return to the absolute sun with only the 3%. I mean, the same as they came down. And the third alternative is to renounce the wheel. And in that case, it will immediately return with the 3% of consciousness under the same conditions as a failed spark. And well, let's now look at this process of evolution in more detail, trying that you get to understand all this process. The purpose is that actually you receive the information, but that you start reflecting on this information, and that you encourage yourself to also investigate, to corroborate this information in the astral plane. Well, once the spark emanated from the sacred absolute sun and it is connected to the wheel of Samsara, it is connected or it enters immediately through the mineral kingdom. In the mineral kingdom, our spark was connected to the physical body of an evolutionary mineral such as a gemstone, for example, or metal, or even a grain of sand. there our soul was called gnome or pygmy. From there comes these names. And this means that when we enter that wheel of samsara, our spark, that is our soul, moves freely in the fourth dimension, but our silver cord is connected to an evolutionary mineral to begin its learning process. And although we see minerals in earth and we believe that they don't have life at all, they are actually the physical body of a spark that is in that kingdom learning. And this spark is there assigned one brain, which is the emotional brain. So it has the ability to feel simple emotions. It has no psychological defects yet, but there is going to start to create them. And the only duty that the spark has in this kingdom is to attend to school, where it's been taught to different things on the kingdom. And under these conditions, it will last thousands and even millions of years, forming its first defects. And the first defects that it forms are those of disobedience, was to the guru devas of nature, the ones in charge of teaching them, and then those defects of antipathy, etc. Of laziness also. And when Anubis sees that the spark already has created like enough defects, he is going to transfer the spark to the next kingdom, which is the plant kingdom. And in this kingdom, our spark is connected to an evolutionary plant according to the original ray to which we belong. It may be an imposing and beautiful tree, or a tree or plant that provides food, for example, or a beautiful flower tree, or a healing plant, etc. In that kingdom, our soul was called elemental, and its consciousness continues with the 3% as it began, but it is evolved with the previously created defects. And here, the spark is assigned a second brain, which is known as the motor instinctive sexual brain. That brain will allow the spark that, in addition to the ability to feel basic emotions from the mineral kingdom, such emotions such as like and dislike, now they will begin with that second brain to develop the instincts. So they now begin to record those emotions of like and dislike. So now it will create effects related to the fear, to the sadness, pleasure and pain, And now it will also have the ability to move slightly in search of sunlight, or move its roots in search of more nutrients, thing that the mineral cannot do. And because of this second brain, it can do. And it has to start fighting for its food, for light, and against those parasitic plants. And in that struggle, the plant or the spark will create new psychological defects, since he already feels pain and has to learn a lot from nature in order to become strong. And because of this brain, it will have the ability to also reproduce. And in this kingdom, that spark must learn everything about plants and their uses. And actually, once we start awakening our consciousness, we will begin to remember this knowledge, or this knowledge that we once got, and we will know how to use plants to heal. And when our guru saw that we have created enough defects after thousands or even millions of years going through different species in that plant kingdom, he is going to disconnect us from the plant kingdom and connect us to the next kingdom, which is the animal kingdom. In this kingdom, our spark was called animal and was connected to the physical body, the silver cord of the spark is connected to the physical body of an evolutionary animal according to a race. That is a pure blood animal, a gorgeous wild animal, or an animal that gives food. And there, this spark maintains the 3% of consciousness, and it maintains the two brains from the plant kingdom, but now with its more developed capabilities. Now it is not planted in the same place anymore, and now can move to search its own food and learn to defend itself from other animals, and will develop all its animal instincts like fornication, like violence, like fear, etc. And as it learns to survive at a wild environment, will create new defects. And after many years going through different species in this kingdom and creating lots of defects, the Guru Deva of that kingdom takes the sparks to the next kingdom, which is the human kingdom. And in this kingdom, our spark is now called soul. And here, the spark receives a third brain, which is the intellectual brain. So now, besides the emotional brain and the motor, instinctive, sexual brain, we have a third brain that gives us the capacity to reflect and to judge our acts. So, as humans, we can gradually eliminate all the defects that we have been creating, and we can, in this kingdom, to rescue the wisdom that is trapped in each one of those psychological defects that we have been creating. But also, as now we have an upright spine, not like the animals, we can consciously direct our sexual energy through our spine, which is like the stairway to heaven. That is our spine. And by doing this, we can start creating our internal bodies. And we can actually, in this kingdom, develop love by consciously sacrificing ourselves for others. So it is in this kingdom where we have the opportunity of awakening our consciousness and to achieve self-realization. And in this kingdom, we will have, as I was saying, the right to 108 existences as humans. This means that we have the right to be born and to die 108 times in human physical bodies. And the first time that our silver cord was connected to a human physical body, it was in a baby born in a tribe, in a place far from civilization, where people were like still connected to that nature from where they just came from. And still they had like the connection with that nature, and that allows them to know how to heal themselves using plants, for example, or how to give birth naturally, or how to find food, but respecting nature and its purpose. So the first existences always takes place far from civilization. Of those 108 existences, the first 54 existences are given in a evolutionary condition. But even so, the human being creates many psychological defects during his evolutionary existences as an evolutionary human. But when existence number 54 is already completed, the evolution will have finished, and the human, due to so much ego that had created, will start the involution process, even though he still has the right to others 54 existences, but now as a humanoid. Now, in these 54 existences, the instinct is going to put the intellect at its service, and the soul or psyche will get black and squiggly, and it completely fills out of ego in those remaining 54 existences. And anyways, we must know that in those 54 existences, will have the opportunity, the same, to awaken consciousness and to look for its self-realization at any time. And it is actually really good that we get to investigate in a conscious astral projection in which of the 108 existences we are currently in this cycle. And we can also get to investigate how many times we have turned in the wheel. That is an interesting investigation to make in the astral plane. And as we can see, until this point, the ego always evolves. We'll be creating more and more ego, and our consciousness will be more and more trapped and asleep. And if we don't take advantage of our soul, we will lose it, since once our 108 existences as humans are depleted without using any of those 108 opportunities to release all our essence and our energy and our consciousness from the ego, and without doing the supersexual work to condense all that energy in our spine, thus creating the existential bodies of the being, and thus achieving self-realization. If we don't do that work, if we don't awaken our consciousness, if we don't achieve self-realization, we are going to enter into the involution process. And well, let's now see what exactly is involution. Well, happens that once 108 existences as humans in a cycle have been depleted without working on ourselves, our spark will be connected in to the physical body of an involutional animal. That means that our silver cord will be connected, for example, to a street dog or to a donkey that is forced to work all day, or to plague, like rats or cockroaches, etc. And all this while our spark, contaminated with all this ego that we already created and we didn't decide to eliminate voluntarily, it's going to pass through this process and it's going to free itself from all this ego while penetrating to the 9 dentist circles, from where it will not come out until nature finishes disintegrating all those defects. And here we will receive several animal bodies, and later our spark will be connected to several bodies of involutional plants. So we will be going down through the kingdoms, and finally we will arrive to the involutional mineral kingdom, where a spark will be connected to, let's say, like minerals in decomposition, for example. And in involution, nature will disintegrate all the psychological defects, and we will accomplish what is known as the second death. And this process of involution can actually last thousands or millions of years. And at the end of this process, our spark will get out totally cleaned from the ego, but just with the 3% of consciousness, because through this process, we will be losing that soul that we have created, and with that soul, we will be losing all the wisdom acquired in that turn on the wheel. And that spark, with the 3% of consciousness, because we never lose that, and with the 97% of innocence, will be connected again to the evolutional mineral kingdom to start a new cycle. That is a new turn in the wheel to create a new soul. So it's going to be connected to this wheel again. And well, if we like take a moment to look at this wheel of samsara, and we get to reflect on this, we must realize that it is actually like absurd to believe that we as humanity can escape this process, sorry, that we can aspire to constant evolution, that we can, by just, I don't know, letting the time pass, wait that we are all go to make a quantum jump, or we will get to, by doing nothing, get to awaken our pineal gland, or we will start, because of time, to become more conscious people without working on our own psychology, without also paying the karma for all the damage that we have been causing existence after existence. It is actually absurd to expect different things to start happening if, as humanity, we continue to do the same things and making worse mistakes every day. If we reflect on ourselves as humanity, we could believe that because we have now more technology, or that because we have greater access to information, we can think that we are evolving, when internally, spiritually, we are more and more degenerate. Even though at first we don't accept that. If we get to self-observe ourselves, we are going to see that we are crueler every time. We are more perverse. It is just like observing our planet and seeing how we are destroying it, ending all its resources. Observing how a frank decline in critical thinking, in art, in music, in philosophy is seen everywhere. If we analyze ourselves internally, if we manage to wake up to see our own internal decay, we will realize that we are actually not in evolution but in involution, and that we urgently need to make an internal revolution. Because only through conscious revolution it is possible the human regeneration, and it is possible to free ourselves from this wheel of constant death and rebirths, of evolution and involution. And what is revolution? Or better said, what can we do to start a real inner revolution? Well, to achieve that, to make an inner revolution, we must work on ourselves, applying the three factors for consciousness revolution, which are to die, to be born, and to sacrifice for humanity. To die is, or when we are talking about dying, we are talking about the psychological death. That is the observation and elimination of all those psychological defects that reside inside of us. Because we think that we are one, but actually, when we get to self-observe, we discover that we are many, that we are actually a legion, that at all times, different ways of being manifest in me. And all of them have a different way of thinking, thinking, feeling, acting, talking. Because when I am sad, I don't feel, think, act, or talk in the same way that when I am happy, or when I am angry, or when I am, lazy, or when I'm feeling lost. Because every psychological defect that we have, and we have many, have their own way of expressing themselves. That is why our consciousness is currently asleep, because we are at all times be like dominated by all the different ways of being that we have in our interior. For that reason, we must start practicing psychological death. And what is this? To practice at all times what is known as the self-observation. That is directing our attention to our inner world, to discover what am I thinking, what am I feeling, what am I doing, and why am I thinking this? Who is the thinker, behind this thought? What am I feeling, and who is feeling them? Who is feeling that? If it is anxiety, then we must judge it, because it is not consciousness. It is a defect, and it has trapped a part of my consciousness. And once I discover that I'm feeling anxiety or that anxiety is moving in my emotion, the next step will be to consciously eliminate that. And for that, we have in our consciousness the part of love, which is our Divine Mother. So we must ask our Divine Mother, eliminate this defect. You can do that mentally. If you discover that is, I don't know, resentment that is moving in your mind because you are remembering what someone did to you and you start like feeling the anger, so you are going to ask for death to the defect that is manifesting in your intellectual center and to the defect that is manifesting in your emotional center. And if you are saying something when you are talking, what you are doing is that you are criticizing, for example, or what you are manifesting is an eye of lust or what is manifesting through your mouth or using your motor center to talk is I don't know, is anger or is greed or is pride. Then if you are self-observing, you are going to be able to discover the defect that is manifesting through you, that is making your consciousness to fall asleep, and that has trapped a portion of your consciousness. And what you're going to do, you're going to immediately ask your Divine Mother to eliminate it. The psychological death will help us to liberate that 97% of consciousness from all those defects. That is the first factor to, let's say, revolutionize our consciousness. The second factor is to be born, and that is the spiritual birth. And we are going to be born spiritually when we start making a wise use of our sexual creative energy to create the existential bodies of the being. We are going to start practicing first to stop fornicating. That is to understand that our sexual energy is creative, it is very available, and we must stop reaching orgasm and ejaculation. So we are going to connect sexually with our partner, but now to raise our sexual energy through our spine instead of making or having sex, to reach that point where you expel your sexual energy. You are going to retain your energy, and through the super sex practice that we taught in lecture number 1, and that we are going to talk again about that in lecture number 10, what you're going to do is that you are going to channel that energy through your spine, and in that way you're going to be fixing all that liberated essence and energy in your spinal cord, and that way you're going to start first regenerating your physical body, second to regenerate your vital body, and later on to create your solar astral body, from which you have only an embryo or principle of that body, the same creating our mental body and creating our causal body. And we are going to do that with the practice of the spiritual birth, or the second factor for consciousness revolution. And the third factor is to sacrifice for humanity, and that is to unselfishly and totally free of charge, free of everything, to give knowledge to humanity. And with the sacrifice for humanity, the love is awakened. And actually, you manage to develop the other two factors faster and better because of the merits of the heart that you do when you practice the sacrifice for humanity. Because each one of your defects have some karmic depths. Because every time you let a psychological defect to manifest instead of consciousness, then you are like producing a karmic debt, and you need to pay for all your karmic debts in order for you to free yourself. So the sacrifice for humanity is going to help you to pay for your karmas with love, by helping others, by sharing the knowledge with others, by helping others to awaken. And actually, the merits that you make with the sacrifice for humanity are also going to help you to make this process of the creation of the of the existential bodies of the being faster. So here are the three steps or the three factors that are going to help us to revolutionize our consciousness, to free ourselves from the ego, to free ourselves from this wheel of constant birth and death, to of pain and pleasure, and to achieve the self-realization. As I was saying, only through conscious revolution it is possible the human regeneration. And well, this has been today's topic. This is the lecture. And if you have any question about this topic, we here in the page are always available to help you with any concern that you have, with any doubts. And I want to invite you to the next lecture that we are going to see next Wednesday at the same time, where we are going to be talking about the infra dimensions, that those are the dimensions inferior to this third dimension. And we are going to learn that if we want to ascend higher and higher in the superior dimensions, we must first descend to get rid of everything that binds us to our infra dimensions. So that is a very interesting topic, so don't miss it next Wednesday at the same time. Well, this has been our for today. Thank you very much to all of you, and see you next time. Ciao, ciao.